Hello students, welcome to Manifested e-learning platform. My name is Wilson Andove. I'm your literature teacher. In the previous lessons, we looked at short forms and we also talked about long forms. We said long forms are of two categories. We have songs and narratives. So in today's lesson, we want to look at narratives. And we shall begin by defining the term a narrative. A narrative is essentially a story or a folklore. In Kiswahili, they're called hadithi or ngano, but in English, they're called narratives. So a narrative is just an account of people's or events. It's an account of people's life or events. And this account can either be factual or fictional. So we have two keywords here. We have factual or fictional. And you have said it is an account, which means you are documenting the life of a community. This life can either be factual, which means representing the truth as it were, or fictional, which means it's not real, it's out of imagination. So that is a narrative. It's also called a folktale. Now, we have class of narratives. So we want to look at class of narratives. Classes of narratives. And we have 9 classes of narrative. The first one is called a myth. Yes, a myth is a type of a story that tries to explain the origin of natural phenomena, natural happenings. Myth actually, they try to trace the origin of a community, the origin of a people, aspects like creation and other factors like death. Myth students are seen as being holy. Myth involves supernatural beings, and they explain the origin of natural happenings, which we call phenomena. This is the word students. Phenomena is the plural. Singular is phenomenon. Now, a myth is a story that explains the origin of a community. For example, the origin of the Gikuyu community, such a story is a myth. The origin of the Baluya community, such a story will be a myth. And for a story to be termed as a myth, it must have supernatural involvement. So, must have supernatural beings. For example, we should have the aspect of God or gods or angels playing a central role in that story. So essentially, myths are seen as being holy because they involve the supernatural beings. Another class of narrative is what we call an etiology. Etiology or explanatory. Now students, this type of narratives is close to a myth. It also explains the origin of natural phenomena. Only that it talks about these normal issues. Does not deal with serious issues like creation. Etiologies are seen as being secular. Myths are seen as being holy. For example, the story that explains why the chicken has to scratch the ground is an etiology. The story that talks about why zebras have striped bodies is an etiology. So essentially, an etiology and a myth are very close. The difference is myths are holy, but the theologies are secular. They explain about the origin of this natural phenomena. The third class is called a legend. As the word suggests, a legend is someone who has achieved extraordinary feats. Someone who has achieved something great for the community. We call such a person as a hero or heroine. So a legend talks about the life of a hero or heroine. A hero is a male character, while a heroine is a female character. So a story that tries to edify, that tries to talk about these people, such a story is called a legend. A classic example for a legend is that the story of Luanda Magere. Luanda Magere is a legend from the Luo community. Stories of Gor Mahia and Mekatili Wamensa are examples of legends. And for a story to be a legend, the character must have superhuman abilities. Superhuman abilities. That means that character is not your human being, has extra capacities that are beyond our human abilities. And most legends, actually, the characters end up in mystery. That death is always mysterious. For example, you are told Luanda Magere, once he died, his body turned into a rock. So his death is a mystery. The fourth example of a narrative is what called trickster. Trickster. Now, students, as the word suggests, a trickster is a story where there is trickery. The word trickery means there is deceit. In other words, characters deceive each other. And in most stories, the hare is seen as the grand trick master. And the hare tricks big animals like the elephant and the hyena. So they are called trickster stories because there is element of trickery. And for one to be tricked, it means that character is gullible. Gullible means you are easily tricked. So the hare is seen as being the hare is seen as being a cunning animal because he tricks other animals, while the hyena is seen as being gullible because he is easily tricked. Related to trickster, students, is what we call a fable. A fable, again, is an animal story. Unlike a trickster, which has trickery, a fable does not have trickery. It talks about animals generally, the way they socialize like human beings. For example, a story about an elephant being a friend to the chameleon, that's a fable. In fact, they're called tantalizing animal stories. It means sweet animal stories where animals interact with each other. For example, you can see the hare being a friend to the chameleon. So such stories where we see animals socializing, they're called fables. And actually they carry a moral lesson. They must have a moral lesson. Another category of narrative, students, is what's called a dilemma. Now, the word dilemma suggests a difficult situation that a character is found and this character is unable to come out of it. we normally say you are between a rock and a hard place. So in narratives, a story that gives a character in a difficult situation and he has to make a decision. And either way, the decision is a mistake. That's a dilemma. For example, there's a story about a story that is set in Africa about a severe drought that was actually a severe drought that had killed so many people. And so the elders went to the oracle to ask for a solution. They were told for that drought to come to an end, they must give human sacrifice. And with this to be sacrificed, they should give the most beautiful lady in that community as human sacrifice to the oracle so that the drought can come to an end. Now, that's a dilemma. Imagine you as a parent giving your child to be sacrificed. But on the other hand, if you don't do that, the whole community is going to perish. So such a decision is a difficult one, and it's called a dilemma. Another type of a narrative, students, is what we call human tales. A tale is just a story. And in human tales, we focus on human beings as the central or the key characters in those stories. For example, you can see a man who has married many wives, and these wives are jealous of each other. We can see brothers fighting over leadership. So stories that involve human beings as central characters, they're called human tales or human narratives. Next, students, is what to call monster or ogre narrative. In the African myth, in the African stories, we have an ogre character. An ogre character is a character that is half human, half animal. And this character can transform into anything depending on the situation. An ogre can transform into a very handsome young man or into a very beautiful young lady, depending on the situation. Ogres actually, they're called amanani in the Luya language or the Marim in the Kikuyu language. Ogres, in most cases, attack a character whose behavior is unbecoming, whose behavior does not conform to the dictates of the society. For example, there's a story about a young lady who didn't want to get married by men in her community because to her all of them were not good looking. And so the word spread to the land of the ogres that this lady who was refused to marry all the men in her community because they are not good looking according to her. And so one ogre transformed himself into the most handsome man ever lived. He came to the lady's compound, and the lady fell in love with him, and she married him instantly. Later on, she learned that this man was actually an ogre. She had married an ogre. But with ogre narratives, we always find that that person who is despised, who is looked down upon, emerges as the savior. In that story that I've just said, this beautiful lady got married. Her younger sister, who was, so to speak, not very beautiful, accompanied her to a marriage home, and she's the one who actually rescued her from the jaws of the ogre. Ogres also, they're always defeated by man because they are equally gullible like the other characters. So in ogre stories, man will always triumph, will always win in that war. But ogres come to warn us that if we have unbecoming behavior in the society, then they'll come to correct. Ogres also are seen as being Selfish because they derive a lot of pleasure when human beings are suffering. The last category of story students is what you call spirit or ghost narratives. Now, a spirit or a ghost is a story about dead people. For example, someone who is dead and reappears in a story. We call that a ghost narrative. We have the ghost element in it. Someone who is dead and reappears in a story and will influence the events in that story. We call that a ghost or a spirit narrative. So students, to sum up, we have said that a narrative is just an account of our life as human beings. It can either be factual or fictional. We have said factual means it's real, it actually happened. Fictional means it's not real, it's actually out of sheer imagination. Narratives are actually called stories or folk tales in the African society. And we have said you have 9 types of narratives. We have myth, we have etiology, we have legends, we have trickster, we have fables, we have dilemma, human tales or human narratives, we have monster or narratives, and finally, we have the spirit or ghost narratives. So students, in our future lesson, we're going to look at examples of each of these narratives. We shall be looking at an example of each of these narratives as we discuss further. Until next time, I've been your teacher, Wilson Andove. Have a blessed time. Thank you.